Farmer Peters and His Underworld Adventure. Written and narrated by Mark Eyre. Dedicated to Lewis Eyre. Chapter 1. The Farmer's Failure. It was a matter of great embarrassment to Farmer Peters that he had never won anything. Not a sausage. Despite entering almost every competition he was eligible to enter, and a great deal that he wasn't. In fact, you could go as far as to say that Farmer Peters was somewhat of a competition addict, always hoping for the thrill of the big win. Oh, how fantastic that would feel. Now, as his name would suggest, Farmer Peters was a farmer by trade. Ploughing the land had long been a trademark of his family, going back many generations. Indeed, the Peters household and farm had been the hotbed of agricultural activity in the town of Amesmouth for as long back as the record books note. His great-grandfather had once earned the rank of the Supreme Vegetable Master due to his annual success in the Amesmouth Town Farmers' Awards. Even on his deathbed he entered the competition, winning first prize for his double-sized spring onions. His last words before he left his mortal coil were, "I would like to thank." His own father, Old Man Peters, had similarly achieved great success over the years, and although now retired, still had his bedroom decorated with first prize ribbons, trophies and certificates. Never a particularly pleasant man even in his youth, these days Old Man Peters did little but rock back and forth in his creaky old rocking chair, stopping only to aim the occasional right foot at the passing pet cat Lani, and to belittle poor Farmer Peters for his lack of success. "What would your great-grandfather say?" he would mutter under his breath, but always loud enough for Farmer Peters to hear. "You couldn't even win a competition if you were the only person that entered it. An embarrassment to me, that's what you are." Farmer Peters himself was a far nicer man. In his late 30s, he was beginning to show some signs of age, particularly around his waistline. It would be unfair to call him fat, although Old Man Peters frequently did, but it was clear that he had spent far too many evenings eating cakes, cheese and other fatty foods. His hair was short, as was he, indeed a mere 5'1", and thinning on top. His nose was comparable in many ways to those of the pigs on his farm, being fairly rounded and flat, but he had big blue eyes that could brighten up any room. Above his lip was a wispy moustache that usually contained the evidence of a secret midnight feast the night before, cake crumbs or flaky pastry. His fairly comical look was quite apt, as it matched his personality completely. His laugh was truly from the depths of his stomach, all guttural and ground-shaking, and he nearly always wore a smile, except for when in the company of Old Man Peters, and after the annual Amesmouth Town Farmers' Awards ceremony. If truth be told, Farmer Peters never wanted to be a farmer at all. He had always dreamed of being a world-famous scientist, and to invent something so incredibly ingenious and original so as to become an overnight millionaire and move abroad to a nice hot country, leaving the Peters farm far behind him. Despite showing great promise with the sciences throughout his education, as soon as he left school at the age of 16, Old Man Peters had him working the fields from sunrise to sunset. The one time that he had dared to suggest that he was planning on moving to the city to study chemistry soon resulted in Old Man Peters giving him a good old thrashing with a wooden cane on his poor bare buttocks. He couldn't sit down for a week. Despite reluctantly giving up on his dream of becoming a scientist, he had retained it as a hobby. Each night, once he heard the sound of Old Man Peters' rocking chair cease creaking, followed by the sound of snoring so loud that it could wake the dead, the night would become his own. He would unlock his walk-in wardrobe door, sift his way through the small collection of coats that shielded this secret location, and enter his miniature laboratory. He would then spend a good few hours mixing chemicals and all sorts of weird and wonderful ingredients together, with Lani sat upon his lap, gently purring and grateful to be far away from Old Man Peter's smelly boots. Here they would sit together late into the night, until the eyes started to droop through tiredness, and Farmer Peters would retreat to his bed for a couple of cakes, some cheese, and occasionally a few other treats, before closing his eyes for a well-deserved sleep. Now, as you probably know, farmers generally have to get up early in the morning to tend to their animals and crops. For Farmer Peters, this was always particularly difficult, as the late-night science experiments meant that he had had very few hours to sleep. What made things worse was that every day he got the same rude awakening. "Get out of my way, you thief!" shrieked Old Man Peters. This yelp was followed by a thudding sound, which in turn was followed by a loud meow. With that, Lani burst into the room, quickly followed by one of Old Man Peters' boots. This was a daily occurrence. Lani had obviously helped herself to one of Old Man Peters' breakfast kippers, and found herself on the wrong end of the already grumpy old man's early morning grumpiness. As the boot connected with Lani's rear, she let out another yelp, and launched herself first onto Farmer Peters' oversized belly, before bouncing onto his still crumb-covered face, and then finally onto the bedside table. Although a very slender cat, her addition to an already overcrowded table caused a chain of events that was going to significantly change Farmer Peters' life forever. Firstly, as her body descended onto the table, her hind legs landed on a misplaced science journal. The journal upturned and catapulted a half-eaten slice of cheese into the air and against the windowsill, before knocking 2 test tubes of Farmer Peters' latest experiments out of the slightly open window and onto the vegetable field outside. Oh my, come here, Lani," uttered a still half-asleep Farmer Peters. "It's all right. There's nothing to worry about. Come, let's get a few more minutes' sleep." With that, Lani gave a more satisfied meow and hopped onto the bed, nestling up against Farmer Peters' oversized frame and going to sleep. Farmer Peters himself gave a loud yawn before drifting off into a deep slumber. Now, I mentioned that this chain of events was going to change Farmer Peters' life forever, and it would be quite reasonable for you to be thinking that nothing particularly out of the ordinary had happened. After all, I clearly mentioned that such early morning chaos was a daily occurrence. Where this day differed from the others, however, was the effect of the chemicals that found themselves deposited onto the ground below. Little did Farmer Peters know, but by accidentally mixing the content of 2 of his test tubes together, he had inadvertently discovered a potion unlike anything created before. And whilst he snored and dreamed a happy dream about living on a desert island far away with just Lani by his side, the chemicals seeped deeper and deeper into the soil outside, and the world would never be the same again.